if you and your house are going to serve the Lord, if you're going to maintain rhythms and practices and rituals that create space for your life to live for and towards Christ, then you're going to need one of these in your back pocket. And that thing you need is keeping the Sabbath. Scripture says you must keep the Sabbath. Now, must in the sense that it's just more work for you to do. I don't think that's what it's intending. It's more like this is a guaranteed spiritual pick-me-up if you do it. It's a must-do if you want to experience the holy. So in all seriousness, keeping the Sabbath may just be the most important act of faith that you do. And Scripture agrees. It is the fourth of the 10 commandments. It mirrors God's behavior in the creation story from Genesis 1. It is repeated to the Israelites in both Exodus and Deuteronomy. It's mentioned in Numbers, Kings, Nehemiah, and Psalms. The prophets write about it in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, and Amos. It is mentioned in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, Romans, Galatians, Colossians, and Hebrews. And most importantly, Jesus himself talks about it, declaring that he and his disciples will make sure to keep it. As a matter of fact, it is the second most repeated commandment in all of the Bible outside of worship God only. In our passage today, Psalm 127 has an interesting line about keeping the Sabbath in verse 2. It is in vain that you rise up early. It is in vain that you go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives sleep to his beloved. I mean, look at that first and second line. You rise up early, you go late to rest. I mean, it's suggesting that you're spending all day and all night working. It's in vain to think that you should work all the time and to see that behavior as good. It's in vain that you eat the bread of anxious toil. You work and work and work and work and work and think you need to work it all out yourself. But the truth is, he gives sleep to his beloved. I mean, this psalm is a direct reference to keeping the Sabbath. It's pushing against the culture that says you need to work constantly and often. It fights against the I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality. And I think this matters. And I think it's quite biblical. It's not nothing that God only needed 6 days to make the world. Day 7, he didn't do anything. In the 7-day creation story, God only needs 6. That's very efficient, by the way. But why do we intentionally include the 7th if it weren't meant to be a part of our spiritual rhythm? Look how it says it in Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, done. All of their multitude, done. On the 6th day, God finished the work that he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the 7th day, hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in all of creation. God is a God who invites us into rest. God hallows, makes sacred the space to rest. God dedicates the rhythm of working 6 days and resting 1. This is the natural rhythm of life. And we need that rest. We need that Sabbath. And I don't mean legalistically that you calendar in 1 full day a week that you do not work. Some of us have to work on Sundays. I do. So I have to find another way to do Sabbath. I think we've moved beyond the legalistic reading of the command. Sabbath keeping is for our well-being. It invites us into a needed relationship with God that just can't get accomplished through work. And you can do Sabbath whenever you need to. What you most definitely need is a consistent rhythm. Hence, God built it into the creation story. You work 6 days and rest one. Then you work 6 days, and then you rest one. And then you work 6 days, and then you rest one. As I've dug into this command, I'm realizing there's a very important precept to this. So it's a 10 commandment that you keep the Sabbath. Sabbath, though, it acts as a form of resistance, especially when you prop it up against Egypt and how they understood how we relate to the gods. Now, hang with me for a second because I think this is super cool. You have to go to Exodus 20 to get the 10 commandments. Exodus 20, it's the Decalogue, if you will. But there's an interesting precursor to the 10 commandments. It doesn't just list them. It opens with this. Exodus 20, verses 1 and 2. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. That's the opening line, and then you get the 10 commandments. We get no other gods, honor your father and mother, keep the Sabbath. They're all written under the backdrop of Israel coming out of the land of Egypt, and they're intended to be a new world order that juxtaposes the socioeconomic order of Egypt and Pharaoh and the gods, and then what God is doing, this new thing with Israel. Now hang with me, this is so cool. In Exodus, there's a constant juxtaposition between Egyptian rule, Egyptian power, Egyptian dominance, the work of Pharaoh, and the worship of all the Egyptian gods up against the God of the oppressed, up against the God of Abraham, the God of the inflicted and the enslaved. This dichotomy in Exodus is everywhere. And in Exodus 5, we see an entire chapter that is this passionate narrative about Egypt, about the labor system that Pharaoh installs and the endless demands that's created on the enslaved. There is a detailed account of what they are to produce, the quantity of bricks that are demanded by the Israelites and what they're using them for. They're making bricks so they can build cities that don't exist, that can just store all of the extra stuff, the commodity of the Egyptian empire. It's just material wealth. I mean, look at Exodus 1:11. Therefore they set taskmasters over them. Pharaoh did this over Israel, to oppress them with forced labor. They built supply cities, Pithom and Ramses, just for Pharaoh. The Egyptian empire demanded from the enslaved Israelites more and more bricks, more enslavement camps, more spaces and small cities for nothing more than surplus. I mean, Pharaoh in Scripture is depicted as this hard-nosed production manager, and Egyptian production schedules are inexhaustible. I mean, look at Exodus 5:4. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their work? Get to your labors. Next verse, in verse 5, Pharaoh continued, now they are more numerous than the people of the land, and yet you want them to stop laboring? Exodus 5:7 and 8. You shall no longer give people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you shall require of them the same quantity of bricks as they have been made previously. Do not diminish it, for they are lazy. And that is why they cry, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Exodus 5:9. Let heavier work be laid on them. Then they will pay attention to it and not to deceptive words. But the rhetoric from Pharaoh is relentless. And this is just the first half of the chapter. It actually gets much worse, all to the single point that the production schedule of Egypt is relentless. It is clear that the Egyptian system, there can be no Sabbath rest. There's no rest for Pharaoh in his supervisory capacity, and there is undoubtedly no rest for the production schedules. Consequently, there can be no rest for the supervisors and taskmasters that are enslaving Israel. So, of course, there is no rest for the slaves. It is all about relentless work, relentless quota meeting. We are making, doing, building, serving, expanding. The Egyptian gods never rested either because their commitment to the aggrandizement of Pharaoh's system of labor is so rich. The Egyptian economy, it reflects the splendor of the gods, and it's one that just grinds endlessly for further production. And then, in the midst of that narrative for Egypt, enters God, Moses, a burning bush. The God of the Exodus heard the disparaging cries of the slaves. The God of the downtrodden is resolved to liberate the slave company of Israel from the very system that exploits them. The God of the broken creates a new reality in which life in the Israelite economy is no longer determined and completed by this insatiable production quota of Egypt and the Egyptian gods. The 10 Commandments, the Decalogue, is a shout of triumph that a new world order is at hand, and it is different than that of Egypt. People will rest from their toil. People will enjoy freedom. People will embrace mercy. People will understand steadfast love and faithfulness, not through a chain of command, but through a covenantal relationship with their God. This new covenant is all about relationships. It's not about making bricks or commodities or advancement. God's new kingdom isn't dependent on endless work. God is not anxious about getting it all done today. In God's covenantal kingdom, there's no reason to be a workaholic. That's all still very true today. Nothing's changed with God and God's covenantal relationship with us. If you're beating yourself up, wearing yourself out to produce and make and further and build and try, and you're at the end of your rope doing it all, then you need to know that God's kingdom is not dependent on you breaking your neck to finish. God's kingdom is not dependent upon your endless work. There is a rhythm that is needed. We work 6 days. We rest 1. So we can work 6 days and rest 1. This is the cycle. It's the rhythm. And it's good for us when we do it. I hope you have a rhythm and a routine of Sabbath. I hope your family does. You need a chance to turn everything off, to go on vacations. You need to know and see the world around you. And you need to know that the world is not dependent upon your breakneck efforts. It's during Sabbath that Israel was reminded that God will provide. It was during Sabbath that Israel remembered how they were freed from Egypt. It's during Sabbath that God's mercy was revealed to show them their good new future. It's during Sabbath that Israel was reminded that they have always been in a relationship with God. That's still all very true today. And I think when you hold that, it really changes the way you hear Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards the city, the guard keeps watch in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early. It is in vain that you go late to rest. It is in vain that you eat the bread of anxious toil. For he gives sleep to his beloved. Sabbath is the sleep God intended to gift you because you are God's beloved. Sabbath is your chance to rest, to exhale. God is not anxious about getting it all built today. You can rest, exhale, sleep. It is the gift God gives God's beloved, and you are God's beloved.